Hello, you are listening to the Blue Monday podcast. This is the 3 times weekly audio show looking into the exciting happenings of Ipswich Town Football Club. My name is Benjamin Bloom and I'll be here each and every Friday for the Blue Monday preview show with a special guest to get their insider view on next opponents for Ipswich Town. Ladies and gentlemen, representing Wolverhampton Wanderers amongst the smuggest supporters in the whole of Europe at the moment now, and the Wolves Fancast, Mr. Luke Thompson. Luke, how are you doing? Have you finished your Christmas shopping?
I have not, but I must say that is some intro. That is.
Did you like how I did it all in one breath as well?
that is amazing. You can tell you don't smoke.
I quit about, I don't know, it must be about 10 years now. Christ.
And you're better for it, I can tell.
To be fair, I'm reading it off my laptop.
Well, but no, some intro. You know, I don't get an intro that good on the podcast I do for the Wolves.
Well, you should.
I'm going to have a word.
You should do, frankly. Let's just go to your Wolves supporting roots. What's your vintage, and can you remember your first game?
My first game was in 1996. Played Grimsby Town at home.
Graham Taylor?
Yes, Graham Taylor. We won 4-1.
And Steve Bull scored 5?
Yes, Steve Bull got a double hat-trick. and saved 3
all
penalties.
Headers.
Yeah, saved 3 penalties. It was an amazing game. And I always remember, I know it's slightly against the law, but my uncle let me have a bet on the game, and I backed Tony Daly, first goal scorer.
Oh, Tony, because Graham Taylor would have had Tony Daly at Aston Villa and brought him back. Amazing. And would that have been... So they gave Graham Taylor a load of money and he had Bull, Goodman and Roberts up front, just like the most marauding, rampaging front three ever, yeah?
Yeah. That was some front line, that was some front line. But typical Wolves, always letting us down.
In the playoffs, normally?
Or just missing out by like a goal.
Having been
in it, or just by the cruelest of margins.
Having been 20 points clear in, I don't know, February. I nearly got in a fight outside Wolves Stadium once. I was only a young kid as well. And Ipswich just lost 1-0. And Kevin Muscat, who I hated, I think everyone hated Kevin, he scored a ridiculous 30-yarder in the 91st minute, smashed it in. I remember it being massively loud in there. And we walked out, and there's the one thing worse than a bad loser is a bad winner. This bloke walks by, and you know when someone speaks deliberately loud because they want you to hear. He went, yeah, you lot aren't all that. You won't go up this season. And I was just a little kid, and I quipped back, oh, well, we'll both stay down. At least it didn't cost us 30 million. And he wanted to fight me.
And how old are you at the time? About 4? And this gentleman was about 37?
Well, if it was Muscat, it would have been 98. I guess I would have been 16, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, he wanted to fight me.
Right. And we missed out on the playoffs that season by 3 points.
Oh, ouch. There we go.
And
right.
Missed out on automatic promotion by a point.
Oh, don't. Well, that's not going to happen this season, but we'll get to that, won't we? So let's go back to last season. We normally do the 2 games. You're probably thinking, what the hell am I going to talk about for 2 0-0 draws? So let's go back a little bit further to July the 21st, because I feel this is important, when Chinese conglomerate group Fosun International purchased Wolverhampton from the parent club for a reported 45 million. Out goes 100-point scoring Kenny Jackett, and in comes comedy goalkeeping Italian manager Walter Zenga. But in come several players, including Helder Coster, Ivan Cavaliero and Roman Saiz. I must admit, on our podcast, we were taking the mick. We were like, "Oh, this is going to be a disaster at this point." What were your thoughts when Zenga came in and signed these players who you presumably thought weren't going to be that great?
It was just an amazing time to be a Wolves fan. You know, the way I looked at it was, it could be good, it could be bad. Who knows? Nobody can predict the future, so just strap yourself in and enjoy the ride, whatever it may be. I mean, Walter Zenga sold me a dream. He sold many a fan a dream. You know, coming in his Adidas Superstars, looking suave. You know, beating his chest after an away win. and was like, "This is the man." Forget his record, forget his previous record.
It's
You know, this
18
is the
jobs
guy.
in 10 years or something.
Yeah, I mean that means nothing. This is the guy, and he did. He sold a lot of fans the dream. But like you said, he is a bit of a comedy actor, isn't he?
It,
Which isn't good.
it didn't go well, did it? But obviously some good came out of it. If you can remember, so the first game was 0-0, August 16th. So Fosun had barely got their feet under the table then. What I remember of this game was John Daddy Budvarsson. It's a pretty good penalty actually, but Białkowski saves it to his right, and a controversially disallowed goal from Daryl Murphy. Any memories of this game, and moreover the kind of start that Zenga made in sort of August, September?
I mean, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Ipswich fans, but it's not a game that's going to live long in the memory.
Absolutely
Neither game last
not.
season were. I mean, I think a lot of the games at the Molineux between the both of us are pretty dreary. 0-0s, 1-1s, 1-0s. So yeah, obviously, the penalty miss, new signing. You're thinking, yes, come on, make yourself a bit of a hero. But instead, he decided to make himself a bit of a zero. And again, it's just one of those ball draws. But sort of the bigger picture from a Wolves point of view. It was just felt like a surreal time to be a Wolves fan. We was getting these players in that none of us could sit there and say, "Oh yeah, we've heard of this player before. He's going to be amazing." But when you're seeing them, it was like, "Oh my god, these players are actually half decent. What is going on?"
So just
these sort of
smarten
players,
me up, Luke. So Cavaliero actually signed. I think Costa was a loan,
on
but
loan.
then did
Yeah.
did he sign properly in January or?
Yeah. Signed properly in January for 13 million, I think it was.
Oh my god, 13 million, which must have been your transfer record by
It was
a mile, yeah.
Yeah, by a substantial amount. And we're just thinking, why are we spending? Like Cavallero in the summer reported 7 mil. It's like, why are we spending 7 million on players from Monaco that have played in the Champions League? What is going on? This isn't Wolves. We spend big money on players who have been very average in the Premier League, and then they come to Wolves and they do absolutely crap.
Yeah, Derby, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That was us in the 90s. Just throw money at average crap.
And we always say this. We say on our pod that Derby are the Wolves of the 90s. And it's always declining players as well. It's people who were really good for a team, went to the Premier League, played 5 years, did okay, and then they're kind of coming back down. But people like Helder Costa and Cavaliero and Saiss are obviously on the upward trajectory. But someone who was not on an upward trajectory was Walter Zenga, who lasts 87 days and is fired on October 25th. And then ex-Norwich boss Paul Lambert comes in. So after all the Adidas glitz and glamour of Zenga, a dour Scots ex-Norwich manager. What were your thoughts when that one came in?
I wasn't over the moon. I wouldn't have sat there and thought, yes, okay, we need a new manager. Let's go and get Paul Lambert. I don't think any fan would have. But it was what it was. He got hired. Again, he sold me a dream. I'm quite gullible. I'd watch his interviews. I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, he's going to care about this club. He's going to take us places. He did well at Norwich. So that's what we held on to. He did well at Norwich. Never mind that he did absolutely terrible at Villa. And, we'd excuse Blackburn because it's Blackburn and they was on a free fall anyway. So, yeah. But then we started to see the football that he was producing and it was like, oh my God.
So the two teams meet again with Wolves having lost 6 on the trot and 21st, 1 point off the relegation zone. Unfortunately, Luke, it's another 0-0 draw. And I remember thinking, at least I get to see Costa play. He was on the bench. Straight after that game, Wolves win 5 on the trot to move themselves clear of the bottom 3. Any memories of the second game? And were you worried at that point? Because obviously that was the game. If you look, I just looked at the statistics. It's loss, draw against Ipswich, win. So basically, you've got Ipswich to thank for not getting relegated.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Tractor Boys.
Were you actually worried that you were going to carry on down into the bottom three?
Um, I think it was in the back of your mind. But I did feel quite confident that we had enough about us to stay up. So there'd be slight conversation.
Oh, you're back, Luke. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. No, I just had a phone call.
Oh,
Somebody was trying to call and it's interrupted the Skype call.
no problem. You were just
sorry.
in the middle of telling me whether relegation worries were actually going to come true.
No, I don't think there ever was. It was just a case of, let's just write this season off now. It's a waste. We've wasted a season. We've got a plan. We've got a project. But we're going to be a year behind because this season is just a complete write-off. Let's just get these 46 games out of the way, and then fingers crossed we'll get rid of Lambert, and then we can build next season. That was the main sort of thinking of Wolves fans last season.
Okay. So the fingers were crossed, and so Wolves finished in 15th spot, one place above Ipswich, and on the 30th of May, Paul Lambert and a load of his backroom staff, including the already mentioned Tony Daly, were fired by Fosun International. In comes another goalie, 43-year-old former Valencia and Porto manager, Nuno Espirito Santo, and the influence of Portuguese super agent Jorge Mendes grows at the club. Talk to me about Nuno, what you knew about when he arrived, but more importantly, about Mendes, who apparently even in the first place recommended to Fosun that they bought Wolves, and has obviously since managed to get a lot of his clients to sign.
Yeah, I mean Mendes is for me is a god. He's bringing in players that we would never see down the Molineux without his influence. Now, a lot of people, especially last season, were quite sceptical about Mendes. And thought, is he going to ruin the club? Is he going to be in it for his own gain? Which, to a degree, yes, he is. But his players still need to be successful.
So the idea is, sorry to interrupt, Luke. So the idea is that Mendes says to a young Portuguese player, well, in the end, you want to get to England and you want to get to the Premier League because that's where you're going to make the most money. And he then offers them Wolves and says, right, you can go to this place here where you will be the best player and you'll play every week, and then in the end either you'll sign a good deal with them and they'll get to the Premier League, or someone else will come and you've got your foot in the door in England. Is that the strategy?
Yeah, that's what it seems like. So we sign Cavallero, 7 mil. He plays for Wolves. He plays really well, so his stock is high. Hopefully, we'll be in the Premier League next season, so he will be playing in front of like the cameras and stuff week in, week out, and his value will triple. So Jorge Mendes makes more money, but then so do Wolves. So I don't see it as a negative. I see it as a positive. These players are going to sign for Wolves, leave Wolves, but will make money from their sales, which is how football works.
So as long as you win on the pitch, everybody wins, don't they?
Yeah, of course. The fans are happy. We'll be playing a level above what we've ever played before. Uncle George will be happy because he'll be making some money off his players. His players will be happy because they'll be playing in a winning team. Then they'll be going off to earn more money than what we can offer them. Who buys players now outside the top 4 or 6 and keeps them for 10 plus years?
Yeah,
football's a business. A team like Bournemouth, for example, will buy a player from abroad for say 10 million. He'll play well for Bournemouth. Then what will happen? Chelsea will come in and buy him for 30 million. Look at Leicester with Kante, for example. So I think if you're outside the top 6, I think that's just the reality of football now.
Sure. And what about actually Nuno himself? Because obviously Zenga was, like you say, a bit of a comedy character. Lambert was, he did brilliant for Norwich, and if he does the same for us, that would be great. But obviously Porto is like this kind of, I don't know, they just churn out the managers and players. They win the league pretty much every year, don't they? And
Yeah.
you see the names that have kind of gone through there. Obviously, that was a bit of a kind of, I don't know, red pill moment. Right, this is serious now. They've just taken a guy out of the Champions League to manage you, yeah?
Yeah. And it was when we hired Nuno, it was okay. This is serious now, and many people laugh. I'd say this in pre-season, and many people would laugh at me. This shows where Fosun want Wolves to be, and it shows that it's a good possibility that it's going to happen. Nuno's not going to leave a Champions League team to come and manage a team that's going to yo-yo between the Championship and the Premier League.
But it's the same thing we said about Mendes's players. It's like, right,
Mm-hmm.
you go to Wolves, you score 90 plus points playing lovely football. He was linked with the Everton job already, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was never going to happen. Everton are a fantastic club, a big club, bigger than Wolves. But obviously, I might be a bit biased, but I believe we've got a bit more potential than Everton at the moment. And once we're in the Premier League, are Everton going to be that far in front of us? I don't believe so. So I think, and I think it would be a lot better for Nuno if he could take Wolves into the Premier League and cement us around that 10th position spot than if he was to do the same at Everton. Because if he did that at Everton, he'd be seen as a failure. Whereas if he does it at Wolves, he'd be seen as a tactical genius.
Very good, very good. So, as well as Nuno, incoming on loan, Boli, Bonatini, Vinagre, and Dye and Jota. On free transfers from Norwich, Bennett and Ruddy. For fees, Douglas, Miranda, and 20-year-old Portuguese international Ruben Neves. So, a lot of money on Neves and high wages for loan players. This seems to be the strategy, yes?
Yeah. And again, Neves is just a joy to watch. Honestly, he's the best player that has probably ever graced this division. He's fantastic, and he's Champions League quality. He really is Champions League quality. So again, it's from a Wolves point of view, it's just enjoy the ride. We're getting to see these players week in, week out. We should consider ourselves very lucky, because if you would have said 5 years ago, these are the sort of players you're going to be having down at the Wolves, you would have laughed.
And interesting, Luke, to see the loan strategy, because we saw Newcastle, as Mick McCarthy would say, just hoover up, I don't know, Matt Ritchie, Dwight Gale, Grant Hanley, just championship-ready players. And then Villa tried to do the same, Lansbury, Hurahan, Codger, Hogan. But this is I'm sure Willy Bolly is very handsomely paid, but obviously you can give him back if you don't get promoted. I assume that's the thinking. And if you actually look at some of them, Bonatini particularly came from Qatar or Abu Dhabi or something.
Yeah. Al Hali, I believe it was.
Yes.
But I think it's a bit more low risk than what Derby have tried over the last 3 or 4 years, what Villa tried last season. Newcastle gambled. Well, say Newcastle gambled. They sold a lot as well, didn't they?
And they had an outstandingly good manager as well.
Yeah. So I think if we use Villa and Derby as the examples, they've gambled and it hasn't paid off. Whereas we're gambling, but I think a bit more low risk with the loans. Which sounds ridiculous to say, because we spent 15 million on Neves, 13 million on Costa, and 7 million on Cavallero. I understand that sounds ridiculous, but to get 6, 7, 8 players in of that calibre, I think using the loan is very important, especially if the gamble doesn't pay off. Because
sure. And there's the financial fair play if that actually means anything.
Yeah. So I'm happy with the strategy. The way the loans are set up as well, we've got first option on them. So they actually work in our favour.
And are they all Mendes guys? Boli, Bonatini, Vinagre and Dye, Jota?
I believe so. I believe they're all from his stable, yes.
Wow.
Neves as well. and that's why people think that Mendes is a negative influence, and he may be long term, but for the here and now, he's absolutely positive. And if we, he's going to use us to his advantage, but we just need to ensure that as a club, we use him to our advantage just as well.
I guess looking in from the outside, I wouldn't use the word negative influence. I guess it's the amount of power he's got in Wolves' destiny.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah.
I think that's probably the way people look at it. But he has that. I remember hearing a podcast, and there's about 3 or 4 of these guys, and they've literally got all of these super agents. They've literally got all of the top managers and all of the top players, and they basically trade them all around every summer and make millions and millions of euros out of it.
Yeah. I think that's the way it is now, and it's a shame because we all would probably prefer football in its purest form, where anyone could win the top division like it was in the 60s and the 70s and whatever. But the reality is, money talks now, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's too much self-interest, isn't it?
Yeah, there is.
The only way you get that is you see how the Americans do it, where it's all linked back to the education system, and they come through, play for their colleges, and then you have a draft, and people have to, that's turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it? If you're Man United.
Yeah, of course it isn't. I mean, on the flip side, it would be nice if all our teams held players that had come through the ranks of 8, 9, 10 years of age in our academies, then started playing for us. But the money is that much in football now that it's just not possible if you want to sort of push on into the top half of the Premier League.
And I bet if you're Sky TV and you put, I don't know, West Brom on telly, you get 1 rating, and you put Manchester City on and you get, I don't know, exponentially 5 times more people watching. So there you go. Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Yes, I was just going to say, so sort of, obviously you're an outsider to Wolves. What are your thoughts, or what are the thoughts of sort of the non-Wolves supporting football fans?
Obviously I thought it was quite amusing at first when we're talking going back 2 seasons, and Zenga comes and you see some of these ones, like how Birmingham's been mismanaged or how Man City was originally. So and then until I saw them play, I was at Hillsborough last week. Until I saw them play, I didn't really have an idea of what was going on. You see the points get totted up and up and up. I don't know. I suppose you're a little bit jealous, but then if George Mendes came along to Ipswich and Ruben Neves was playing in centre midfielders for us, I'd be like, well, hey, I mean, it's so interesting because listening to your podcast the last couple of weeks, we're talking about McCarthy signing a new contract and Evans giving him $1 million. You're talking about teams turning up and playing 10 behind the ball, and fans complaining that you only scored 1 in the win against Sheffield Wednesday. It's how the expectations switch. But I guess you must come across a lot of jealous supporters, right?
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I've sat there myself and thought, oh, look at Chelsea, they've brought the league. Oh. But deep down, you'd all love to win the league, whether it be by a squad of 25 local lads who've all come through the academy, or 25 £15 million plus signings. We all want our team to be the best in the land, don't we?
And I think it's because, like, if you're a Wolves fan, obviously you've showed up 3 years ago when they're down 2 divisions in League One, and if it happened to Ipswich, I'd be like, well, we've just seen 16 years in the Championship, so no, we deserve it. So I guess it would only be the fact that Wolves, when they go up, are probably going to attract a whole load of new fans, and there'll always be that. You even get it at Manchester City still, don't you, where you get the old school guys who are like, oh, I kind of preferred it how it was beforehand, because they don't like all the Johnny come latelys. But but again, there's I suppose it splits football fans, but that's it's the reality of football nowadays, isn't it? Yeah. I don't.
It's not your average man who works in a factory Monday to Friday and then goes down the football on a Saturday. It is more It's a business more than football now, it seems. And like it or love it, that's just the way it is.
Well, and it's
So
entirely predicated on someone giving Sky 70 quid a month for their internet, phone, and football TV subscription.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? That's the most important thing, is that people pay the Sky subscriptions, and then Sky and
yeah.
BT sling 4 billion in at the top level, and then it kind of drips down from there.
It's hilarious though, isn't it? Because you'll see people on social media or at work and like, oh, I hate the way football's going now. It's
I know what you're going to say.
killing the game. And then in the next breath, it's like, you know what? I can't wait to watch the football tonight.
It's like,
is the Champions League on tonight? Yeah.
And by the way, my fibre optic Sky is not working properly. I'd like to,
yeah.
I'd like to complain. Yeah, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So listen, obviously the first half of the season's been ridiculous for you. Do you know what? In our first podcast of the season, I remember you beat Middlesbrough, and I said to Dave, my podcast partner, I said, God, imagine they just went right through now. And, and we both laughed and went, nah, it's Wolves, that won't happen. So 51 points from 22 games, 2.31 points per game, projects 106 points for the season. Can you explain what Nuno has done? And can you talk about a few standout games and standout players, especially, I've got here, Doherty, Neves and Bolly?
Standout games. Middlesbrough, opening day of the season, just come down, you expect them to go back up. And, to beat them, keep a clean sheet, be the better team as well.
Oh, and sorry to interrupt, Luke, they had the opposite transfer strategy to you guys they went for the proven Assombalonga and people like that, didn't they? And,
Yeah. So they've basically done what Wolves done in the 90s. Pretty much, spending money on players who have been half decent or had one half decent season, and then looks like they're going to fall on the bums. You're beating Villa at home as well, massive. Again, another team who you expect to be up there, keeping a clean sheet, being the better team by far as well. Like, just how comfortable we've been in some games. They're the games that have impressed me, more so than the games where we scored 4 and 5. The standout players, I mean, Jota, what a player. His form's, I wouldn't say his form's dipped, but you can see that he's sort of not at the same level he was, say, 6 weeks ago. Neves, again, for me, best player I've seen down the Wolves. Best player who has possibly played in the division. Bolly at the back. But I'll give 2 mentions to players who played last season. Matt Doherty at right back, absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. What a player. And I used to dislike Matt Doherty, but he's made me eat my own words. He's absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't even say 7 out of 10 every week. He's 8.5, 9 out of 10 every week. And Connor Cody, who slipped in at sweeper, came to us as a central midfielder from Huddersfield, was sort of shoehorned in at right back last season, and as a sweeper, there's not many English defenders who are as consistent as him at the moment. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I said, I was at the Sheffield Wednesday game, so I can totally back you up on Doherty, who was, when you see a player and they're just super confident, do you know what I mean? They're just really, really on it, and he got up and down, and obviously it helps that he can give a bad pass to Neves and knows he's going to control it, and he can make a run down the line and he knows he's going to get it, and he also knows that Cavaliero in front of him is going to cause havoc and create more space for him. So it all works into it. But I thought he was great, and Cody was it's very interesting because you look at the background of the players and you expect Bolly to be in the middle, kind of directing everything, but Bolly was slightly out to the left. I'm trying to think of a comparison of a player in. How old is Bolly, by the way?
Oh, I don't know.
Is he getting on in years?
I don't believe he is. I want to say mid-20s.
Well, he was taking the piss in that game. He was. Do you know what I mean? He like had a cigar on virtually, and I always find it interesting because I was sat with the Sheffield Wednesday fans. I always find it interesting when fans get fed up with a guy and they're going, oh, that guy's so lucky. He keeps just nicking the ball and just falling. And I didn't want to out myself like as an Ipswich fan or a non-Wednesday fan, but I wanted to just say that's not luck. When John Walk used to appear in the penalty box and it just used to suddenly land on his head every time, that it was never luck. And I think Bolly's got that, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again with Bolly, you can see he's a Champions League player. Football's all about levels. We've got a few players. I don't want to come across as a really arrogant twat, but we've got a few players who are levels above anything else in the league, and that's why it can look easy for them at times.
Absolutely.
Like Bolly on the podcast last night, I compared him to at school. Remember when you went into year 7? And in year 6, he was one of the best kids at football in the playground. You go to year 7, you think it's going to be the same. So you think, come on, we'll play against the year 10s or the year 11s. I'm a good footballer, I can do it. But then they just take the piss out of you.
Well, and he must be 6'3" or something like that. And he is physically massive. And age 26, God, why did I think he was 1.91 tall and 26 years old? Yeah, he's... Yeah, he's
a beast. He's a beast, and
he cost you quite the transfer fee, wouldn't he?
as well, for a big guy, he's very good on the ball. You know, he's got great composure. I don't think I've ever seen him hoof it.
Is he stoned though when he's playing? He looks like he's like smoked about 3 joints and he's just as chilled out as you could possibly be.
It's weird, you know. He's on the pitch and it's like. It looks like at times he shows no emotion whatsoever. Absolutely no emotion whatsoever. It's just, he's just coasting. That's what it looks like. It looks like he's coasting. But again, we're very, very fortunate to have him.
Yes,
we really are.
I'm sure his weekly wage is probably worth having, isn't it? Right, so can you give me a possible starting 11 for Saturday? And just tell our Ipswich fans listening about this lovely kind of 3-4-3 where not only do you have 2 wing-backs, you pretty much have 2 wingers as well. So anyway, a kind of starting 11 that you might expect on Saturday.
I think it's going to be unchanged from the last... Well, I'll say unchanged from the last 3 or 4. I know Vinagre came in for Douglas. But depending on Douglas's injury status, I think it's going to be pretty similar to what we've been seeing over recent weeks. So I'm sure he'll get a warm reception from your fans. John Ruddy in goal.
He's a good keeper, isn't he? He was a bit of a knob in the last local derby. It's like Norwich scored, and you think, okay, great, but he's like his celebration was rather directed towards us rather than his own. So, but he's a good keeper, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a good keeper. You know, he is a good keeper. And then the back 3, Bennett, Cody, and Bolly. Again, very solid. Bennett, for me, when we signed Bennett, I thought, well, what's this signing all about? I didn't quite get the Bennett signing. But now I've seen him play, I get it. Because he's actually, you know, probably not going to go down very well on your podcast, but he's actually a good defender. You know, he's nothing flash, but he just does his job, and he does his job well.
That's championship, isn't it, Luke? That's
you know. And you know, with all the Portuguese razzmatazz, you need that championship stability as well,
Absolutely.
Don't you? You need a good mix. Cody and Bolly, you know, they've had a fantastic season. Again, wing backs, depending on Douglas's injury status, I'd imagine him to come back in if he's fit, with Doherty on the opposite flank. Saiss and Neves in the middle. Ball retention from them two is just absolutely ridiculous. I'd imagine both to come off the pitch with a pass completion of 88-90%, both of them. It's ridiculous. And then Cavallero, Bonatini and Jota up front.
So Costa doesn't get in the team anymore?
No, he's not started this season. He was injured, which kept him at the team for a while, and he's been having a few 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. But a part of me is thinking, does Jota need a bit of a rest? But then when Costas came on, he's not really done anything to warrant a start. So yeah, I think the team will be same as what started v Sheffield Wednesday, but Douglas may come in for Vinagre.
Oh, very good, very good. So looking at it from an Ipswich fan's point of view, and having seen the game against Sheffield Wednesday. I'd be interested because I thought that Sheffield Wednesday missed an absolute trick. They had Rhodes up front on his own, and then Hooper's kind of ambling around behind him, and Reach is ambling around behind as well. And I sat there the whole game thinking, how can Sheffield Wednesday not see that there's basically two free centre halves who are pretty good on the ball, feeding the two wing backs the whole game. And I couldn't understand how they didn't address that kind of overload, because then Wolves kind of pushed up with the three at the back. And looking at it as an away supporter, surely the only possible way to get around the Wolves in a 3-4-3 is that there's only Saiss and Neves in the middle. If you can kind of get, if you're playing a 4-2-3-1, kind of get three midfielders around Neves and Saiss, you could stop that and then push on at front. Has anybody tried to do that? Because as far as I'm aware, Sunderland didn't press. They just stood off and gave the free man and got a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, and I think mentally we're crippling teams at the moment, because I think they're playing us and their mentality is not to commit because they're scared of being hit on the counter. So I think that's why, I think if Sheffield Wednesday would have committed a bit more, they could have hurt us. But I think their mentality was, shit, these are really good on the break. So do we go or do we sit and try and keep it tight? Bristol City came to us and went for it, and they got a 3-3 draw. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, it's just a bit terrifying, because if you look at it, you've got all these skillful players, and like I just kind of, we went to Derby and we actually won, scored.
You beat 4-2 that game.
No, that was the Forest game. After that, away at Derby, we scored a header from a corner after 4 minutes and defended the rest of the game. But Derby is so different to Wolves. They've got Tom Huddleston swanning around at about 1 mile an hour, and they're quite. Do you know what I mean? They haven't got two wing backs marauding forward, two dribbling wide players, and two centre midfielders, both who can play. It was like, well, okay, Huddleston, you stand there and play a 60-yard ball, and we'll just header it away. Do you know what I mean? It was you could keep your team shape. I can see how they're crippling people mentally, and I can see how they've constantly got a spare man if people kind of sit off, and how Doherty and Douglas or Vinagre can pretty much just go, okay, I'm not going to do much defending today. I'm just pretty much playing midfield the whole game. I mean, Bristol City are pretty good. They beat us at our gaff. I mean, we have got goals in us. Waghorn is a good finisher. If McGoldrick comes back, he's good on the ball. And Garner, even though your centre halves are great, Garner gives everyone trouble because he's just horrible to play against. You just worry about pushing on, and then you remember who Ipswich's manager is, and you think, right, we really going to go away to top of the league? But the way our month has gone, we got home games against Forest, which we won. We won at home, against Reading last week. And it's kind of like, it doesn't matter if we lose to Wolves, because we got QPR at home. We'll still accumulate enough points in the month if we beat QPR. I think a lot of the fans think, go on, just have a go. If you lose 4-1, so be it. Still beat QPR, everything's all right. But that doesn't take into account how much Mick would love to just stink the place up and draw 0-0.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what his game plan was. I mean, what do you like off set pieces?
Oh, really good, actually. Waghorn's got really good delivery. Garner's good, and obviously Webster and Chambers, the other centre halves, are very tall.
I mean, it may be that Mick looks at, let's keep it nice and tight.
Oh, zonal marking, yes.
Try and get the fans sort of frustrated, and let's see if we can nick something off a set piece.
Yeah, because you do the old zonal marking, don't you? Which
I
haven't seen anyone do that in the Championship forever.
Yeah, we struggled at first. We're getting better at it now, but we did struggle with it at the beginning of the season. But I can see that being your game. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to.
No, absolutely not. No,
in any way. But I personally think that would be your best tactic, especially with it being a home game for us.
And a sellout now as well, Luke, as well.
Yeah. A lot of Wolves fans want teams to come to the Molineux and attack us, but I think that's suicide. If we're away, then all right, fair enough. But I think coming to our place, I think it is suicide. But that's Wolves fans. They want us to win every game 5-0. So I mean, for me, if I was sort of looking at it from an Ipswich point of view, I think I would be looking at frustrating because we've shown in the last 3 games that teams who want to sit back, we haven't sort of opened them up that freely. We beat Sheffield Wednesday 1-0. Sunderland came with a plan. We couldn't break them down. Birmingham had a bit of a plan to try and soak up pressure, even though they was at home, and we only beat them 1-0.
Mm.
So I think if you're good on set pieces, I think that, again, not trying to be disrespectful, but I think that is going to be your best outlet. And if you could get an early goal off a corner, like you did away at Derby in the first 4 minutes, who knows?
So yeah, it's very interesting what you say. Against Cardiff away and against Derby away, he played 4-1-4-1. So basically, a flat midfield four and skews our holding midfield just sat in front of the back four. So there's a possibility that might happen if you see the team sheet go in. And we have the interesting one will be we've got a guy Selena on loan from Man City who's really skillful, really talented player, but he got absolutely ripped up by Reading. Had a Luco and Gunter last week, and obviously most Wolves fans would consider them inferior to Cavaliero and Doherty. So if you see Freddie Sears playing on the left and Grant Ward playing on the right, he's going to sit and he's going to have a fullback with a covering player right in front of him. It'll be very, very interesting. How do you see it playing out? Is there any possible chance that you can mess this up?
I think there is. We're going to lose games this season, and a lot of the times it's the games that you don't expect to lose. Again, not trying to be disrespectful, but it could be a coup and buster. It really could. I mean, looking at the last 5 or 6 meetings between us, we've not beaten you at the Molineux since 2006.
Oh, God, don't say stuff like that.
So that's some record. I mean, you've only won once yourself, so there's been a lot of draws in there. And I think it's going to be quite tight.
There is
I really do think it's going to be tight.
The one thing that McCarthy's really good at is when a game is tight, getting out onto the technical area and just coaching his players through and just this rear guard kind of action. It's just a bit scary sometimes. Like even Reading, who are a possession team, it was terrifying. So I mean, we kept a clean sheet, God knows how, on Saturday. But sometimes you think that they're definitely going to score in the next 5 minutes. We can't sit back and absorb this for. I mean, although there's been a few. It's the same against Brentford actually. Brentford played in front of us the whole game. We beat them 2-0. Same with Reading. Forest had 70 possession and we won 4-2. So who knows? But I think what most Ipswich fans will be thinking is, as long as they beat QPR on Boxing Day, you've then got 9 points for the month. There just might be a laugh to have a go.
If you can get one win out of the next 2 as well, that's going to keep you in touching distance of the playoffs, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's another home game after that as well, Luke, as well.
Yeah. And, if you're there or thereabouts in the new year, considering you finished 16th last season, you've got to be looking at that as a positive as an Ipswich fan.
Absolutely. Let's talk some Mick McCarthy quickly, because obviously he split the Ipswich fans. He's in his 5th year, in the final year of this contract. A lot of people say that he's, can't stand him, frankly. He has little digs and, he's very kind of stubborn and grumpy. And sometimes you watch games like the Derby game and the Brentford game where there's no way he should be winning that. And Ipswich basically win because they have a better manager in the dugout than the other team does, and you sometimes think, oh, Mick, you're actually really good. What's your view as a Wolves fan, given how good you were in 2008, 2009 as well?
I believe, now, many Wolves fans disagree with me when I say this, but the day we got promoted, we played Doncaster last game of the season. So, we did our lap of the pitch and whatnot. The day after that, Mick McCarthy should have been sacked. Because, again, football is about levels.
Like QPR did with Warnock. It's like, right, you got us up, now piss off, go on.
But that's what I would have done, because Mick McCarthy is not a Premier League manager. He's a bottom 4 Premier League manager. He's never going to go and take a team into the Premier League and finish 11th or 14th, is he? Well, I suppose. So that's what I would have done. I would have sacked him the day after, because I just don't think he was good enough to push us onto that next level. And then, we had that surviving last day, Blackburn at home. He should have gone then as well. If you're not going to sack him after Doncaster, first season in the Prem, right, we did okay. Second season, appalling. And he should have gone. I was never a McCarthy fan. He's a dinosaur. He's a footballing dinosaur. So, the day we sacked him was one of the happiest days of my life.
Wow. There's going to be a lot of people nodding along, listening.
I just don't... Where do you go with Mick McCarthy as a manager, though? Where does Mick McCarthy take Ipswich? Does he keep you... All right, you might have one season where you finish 7th, but then the next 2 seasons you finish 12th and 14th. I just don't see where a manager like Mick McCarthy takes a club like Ipswich, because, all right, you spent 16 years in the Championship, but it's not like Ipswich are a small club. I remember Ipswich being in Europe in, when was it, about 2002 maybe?
Yeah, for 2 years, 2001.
90 or 90.
Yeah.
But yeah. So it's, it's not like you're a small club. You could easily be a Premier League club. If Norwich was in the Premier League for X amount of years, then why can't Ipswich be? If Bournemouth and Swansea can have 3, 4, however many years in the Premier League, then why can't a club like Ipswich? But with a manager like Mick McCarthy, again, don't want to come across disrespectful, that's not going to happen.
Interesting, very interesting. I think this style of ownership would colour your opinion. I think, given that the owner doesn't want to spend any money, and then all of a sudden in 2014-15 McCarthy gets you in the playoffs having spent no money, the owner's probably like, this guy's amazing, I'm keeping him forever, I don't have to spend anything, and the stadium's got people. But unfortunately, now, after that, Mings got sold to Bournemouth, and then Murphy got sold the next season, and then it's dropped off for 2 seasons, 7th and then 16th. And now all of a sudden it was 13,000, high 13,000s was the attendance against Reading, and the season tickets are down. And I think people are a little bit, it's 16 years in the Championship, 5 years of the same manager. Like you said, where's it going? But
yeah, and sometimes you just need the place freshening up a little bit, don't you? It's like one thing that you touched on earlier in our conversation. Although Nuno has been fantastic, a lot of credit has to go to his backroom staff, because we'd obviously transitioned through different managers since McCarthy had gone, but the backroom staff had remained the same. So the mentality of the club remained the same as well. But now we've got rid of all the cosy club from the backroom staff and got all of Nuno's guys in, bang, you can see that the whole mentality of the club has changed as well. So sometimes, I know people always say, be careful what you wish for.
I hate
that saying.
Oh, God, Luke, I'm totally
with a passion.
I'm totally with you on that. That's basically like saying, if you change something, it might go wrong. It's like, that's just not an intelligent enough hypothesis, is it? Yeah.
It's just the easiest thing to say, like for a match of the day pundit, isn't it? Yeah. Because if a manager or a club's going to sack the manager and they say, be careful what you wish for, and it goes wrong, then they can say, yeah, I was right. Or if it goes right for the club who've sacked the manager, then they can just pretend they never said it in the first place. But it's and Mick McCarthy's a nice guy. There's no denying that. But for me, where does he take a club? McCarthy's like your safe bet. All right, let's have him. If you escape relegation by a point, let's get Mick McCarthy and let's finish mid-table. Season after, we might finish mid-table again, but then bang, he's gone, and we get some fresh blood in. It might be a bit ruthless, but that's the way I see it. I was never really a fan. And that's just, yeah.
No, I'm
from an Ipswich point of view, McCarthy out. I'd be in the McCarthy out. I would be McCarthy out if I was an Ipswich fan.
It's difficult being a being a podcaster, because you end up kind of not having an opinion sometimes. You end up spending so often listening to other people's and then reporting what other people are saying that you kind of don't put yourself in either camp. The one thing I do know is the only way we'll find out how good he is if he leaves. Because if he leaves, and for example, this is like the doomsday scenario for some Ipswich fans, he leaves and it turns out he was doing a great job, the bottom falls out of it, we're in the bottom 6, and then he goes to another club in the Championship and gets given some money and does well. Yeah, I don't know. Imagine he ends up at Derby or something, and all of a sudden he's doing well. But there is...
Well, do you know where he could end up, actually, with a bit of money?
Sunderland?
Barnsley.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought
Barnsley
of that.
boy.
Yeah, Barnsley. And they've just been taken over, haven't they?
Yeah.
Wow.
That could be... I mean, you might not have to sack him. You might do one anyway.
Hey, do you know what? I'm quite keen on him, actually, Luke. I kind of think, given the ownership, I don't really know what more anybody would do. It just depends whether you get someone who comes in and, you know, all of a sudden, for example, they're playing 3-4-3 and they're really passing the ball and they just changed the whole philosophy of it. But I don't know.
Ben, I'll be honest with you. This Championship malarkey, it's easy. All you've got to do is get yourself a Chinese conglomerate to buy you. Get yourself a Portuguese manager with a hipster beard and a super agent.
And a very good central midfielder as well.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake, mate.
2.3 points per game. Away you go. Right, let's wrap this up before I get too depressed. Your favourite Wolves player since you've been watching, since that first Grimsby game in 1996?
Oh, I mean, Steve Bull's too easy to say. I mean, it's obviously Steve Bull, but a bit left field. I loved, and I mean loved, Sylvan Ebanks play.
That's a classic McCarthy. The most Mick McCarthy player in the world. He even came here when he was done, actually.
Yeah, he did. You had quite a few from us, didn't you, when McCarthy first went? But
we had all of them. Stearman, Hunt, Ebanks, Blake. Wow.
How's Iorfa getting
on? He's an interesting guy. I think he's obviously coasted a lot of his life on being this incredible kind of looking athlete who's got a really rangy stride and he's very tall.
Yeah.
When he first came in, I was really kind of keen on him. You kind of think, oh, if you can teach this guy concentration and positioning, you know, he's got all the kind of physical stuff. He's not in the team anymore, so that probably says a fair amount. And you always worry about these physically amazing players who don't end up being centre halves because they can't really be trusted, end up being fullbacks. I don't know. There's definitely a player, and it's the sort of thing that if Wolves offered him to McCarthy on a free, McCarthy would go, yeah, I'll take him and I'll prove to the world I'll turn him into a player. But put it this way, Jordan Spencer's ahead of him at right back, and Spencer's a smart guy, but he was a free transfer from Milton Keynes, you know. So I don't know. I think he's a Championship player, don't you?
Yeah, I like Iorfa. I did like him when we had him. I'd have liked to have seen him given a chance, but yeah, he'll do a job for you in the Championship. He will.
I think there's something there, but it kind of needs. He actually scored against Forest. He had a really horrible game against Villa the week before against Albert Adoma. You know, he made.
He's a good player. I do like Adoma's a good player.
Yeah, and both times Villa scored. Adoma scored both, and Iorfa basically messed up in between. And it's kind of, you know, you get players who, I know, like Luke Chambers is not exactly the most rock and roll footballer, but he'll do that once a season, mess up for a goal.
Yeah.
Whereas Iorfa did it twice in a game. But Sylvan Ebanks.
He's now Fabian Wilnis.
Oh, well done, Luke. Well done, Fabian Wilnis. What a bloody
what a player!
What a player! What a guy he was as well. Can we just quickly do some Steve Bull, because just from the outside, this is an impossibility. Okay, this is so. If you have a player that good, they go to a bigger club. No player can stay at a club and score 250, 300 goals. It's just the biggest anomaly ever, isn't it? Because you think anyone who's that good is going to end up, they play for you for 3 years or whatever, score a whole ton of goals, and obviously he's your greatest player ever. That might change in the next few. Well, no, probably never change.
Yeah.
But it just seems to be an, what's the word where something's kind of an it's like a contradiction in terms, isn't it?
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Well, how can you have a player that good and him actually stay at the club? For a player to be that good, they surely they go, don't they? They don't stay and score 3. It doesn't happen that someone stays at a club and scores 300 goals unless it's Wayne Rooney at Man United and they have no reason ever. Do you know what I mean?
I think it was a different era. I think, if we had Steve Bull now, then we would have had him for 2 years, and then
he'd gone to West Brom for 10 million or something. Yeah.
Yeah, he would have gone to West Brom, and then he would have gone to Everton, and then
Southampton,
Ipswich, and then Southampton, and just become a complete journeyman. So I think we was quite lucky that there was a bit more loyalty in football in the 80s and the 90s. And what there is now.
I did just look before we came on because I love Steve Bull. Do you know what? My first ever football match was Ipswich and Wolves in 1989, and the local radio actually advertised it as there's a bull on the loose, and they're actually advertising the game. Come and see Steve Bull play. And I looked up; he scored 102 goals in 2 seasons.
Yeah.
That's
really well.
That's absurd.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's like 250-plus seasons. And people may say, oh, yeah, but look at what level he was at. But who would do that in League 2 and League 1 now?
And so
it's just unheard of. It's absolutely unheard of. And that's why he's a legend. And he'll go down in Wolves history for the... no one will ever break his record for goals.
That's what I mean. It's impossible for a non-top club to have a... Unless we become like dead good, sign like the next Ronaldo or Messi, which no one's heard of yet, and he just wins multiple Champions League at Wolves over a 15-year period. How things have changed. Right, can you plug the Wolves Fancast? If I know you're not doing a show now between now and Christmas, but I guess you'll talk a bit about the Ipswich game after the Boxing Day game. Yeah, well, so if you want to get on Twitter, get on Facebook, and search for Wolves Fancast. We do a podcast where we talk about football. We talk about a lot of rubbish, to be fair, as well. But we released a podcast last night, and we do actually talk about Ipswich on there. We'll have another podcast just after Christmas, and we will probably talk about Ipswich on there as well. So, if you're an Ipswich fan, have a listen. And there's a very handsome and powerful Ipswich podcaster actually featured on your current podcast, isn't there? Yes. They're a dashing young man that actually features on our podcast this week. And do you know how many points I got? You know how many points I got in your Christmas quiz? Go on. I gave up. It's way too hard. It's bloody impossible. I was queuing in Primark today buying Christmas shopping, and the first question was something about the Mighty Ducks and and I thought, oh, right, I'll have a go. It's 50-50 chance on these. I got the first 3 wrong, and I was just like, no, I can't do it. Do you know the one I was best at, because I'd followed you on Twitter a couple of days before, the last question was how many Twitter followers. I was way closer because I'd followed like a couple of days earlier, but there you go. Stefan Everson is currently playing his trade at Swedish third division side Alfkis IK. Come on. I know. I heard this a matter of 3 hours ago. Right, Luke, thank you so much for coming on. I think the next game's only about 6 weeks away, isn't it? I think we play you at the end of January or the start of February or something. I did not know that. Well, what I was going to say is, can we get you back on for the return game? Although you'll probably just have another 12 points. And hey, you might have signed someone incredible. Ipswich might have spent like $500,000 in the transfer window by then. Could be really.
Yeah.
Could be really. We might sign Dominic Iorfa for 350,000 or something. Could be amazing scenes. But can we get you on for the return game, Luke?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that could be a good podcast right at the end of January. I mean, you may want to get feedback from your listeners first, because they might say, who was that guy from Wolverhampton? I could not understand a word he was saying.
They'll love you because you completely dug McCarthy out for about 5 minutes. So they'll probably love it. But Luke, thank you so much for coming on. If you've got to the end of this podcast, you're probably a subscriber, so we thank you for subscribing. If you've done so on the Apple Podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review and a nice comment. We recommend the Acast app as well. You can check out my YouTube videos. There will be one going up after the Wolves game, immediately after a YouTube video. Just type Benjamin Bloom into YouTube. You'll find that. Give me a subscribe and a follow. And to support the podcast, you can buy a T-shirt if you just check our Twitter biog at Blue Monday ITFC. This will be the last podcast before Christmas, because we could put one out after the Wolves game, but then that would be on Christmas Eve and no one will listen to it, and then we'll play QPR and it wouldn't have been worth it. So we'll see you after then. Luke, can you wish all the Ipswich fans a happy Christmas, please?
Yeah, have all the way from Wolverhampton. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I hope Santa brings you a sacking for Mick McCarthy.
It's awful. Amazing team. Thank you so much, Luke.
No, not a problem. Thanks for having me on. Honestly, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. Right.